so now we're going to go through the solution here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this code from my slide, because I can never remember how to do this each and every time. And I'm going to generate an initializer. And there's a nice little integrated terminal here where I can do ember g initializer geo. And it's going to make some files for me. You can see that we just refreshed. So, and I can get rid of this down here now. And I'm going to go to geo. And here we've got something that looks a lot like what we were working with in the slides, right? We've got our initialize function. We've got a name for our initializer. So we're good to go. And because we want to defer an advanced readiness, I'm going to need access to this app, the instance of the application there. So I'm just going to start. I guess I need to copy again. I'm going to just paste that here. And obviously, we do not have a do something defined yet, but I'm going to advance readiness here and defer readiness before we start. If you've ever used like QUnits, async and done stuff, sort of similar to that, where you kind of hold a reference to a callback, and then when you call it back, things pick up and play as normal. So this is sort of promise-like what we're doing here. So I'm just going to do a debugger here so we can kind of see how things are going. All right, so good. We've got Chrome asking for my location information. I'll allow it. And right now it's trying to figure out where I am. All right, and now we've got a PT thing here, which has an accuracy, and a latitude and longitude, and some other stuff. So I'm really just interested in latitude and longitude. So I'm going to make an object here. We're going to just call it loc equals latitude. I think we said LNG. All right, so that's our location object. And now it comes time to register this, right? We want to put it in the container. So we're going to do app.register data location, and we're going to pass in loc. And just to be explicit, I think that there may be some detection of this kind of situation inside Ember, where it knows that this is not a function, and so it will not try to instantiate this. But just to be verbose and to connect with what we went through in the slides before this, I'm going to say don't instantiate this. Again, I may be overly verbose here. I think it would work in either case.
Spelling there, instantiate.
Thank you. That type of bug never goes away, no matter how long you learn this stuff. Instantiate. All right, so I see that we're still waiting here. The reason we waited and you didn't see the pop-up there is, of course, I've already told Chrome through answering allow when it asked me, do I wish to share location data? I basically said, from this point on, continue allowing location data to be shared. So I'm going to go to the console. Oh, sorry, I want to take a look inside the inspector here. And I'm just going to shift this over a bit. And remember that we can't simply just look in the container here. We're not going to see just a data category here automatically. The way we get visibility into it is we're going to grab the application instance. So I just looked under types, application, I click main, and now you get some properties here, and then this $e gives us a reference to this as a global. So now when I go back to the console, and I do $e, this is an application. So what I can do is access the container, and then we can see a lot of different cool stuff here. So there's the route. There's an auth route there. Here's some services. And I actually forget where exactly I can look in here to see this data thing. but we can cheat. I think we can do well, we'll just do it this way. Lookup data location, and there's our latitude and longitude. So again, we're not returning a factory in this case. We're returning the object itself because we said instantiate false. So now if we were to do something similar, if we were to get a handle on the applications container elsewhere, we would make the same object available elsewhere. So I'm just going to put our latitude and longitude up in the nav bar so that we can, render it on the screen and kind of close the loop here, use the data that we set up. So I'm just going to go into the application.js route, the application route, and I'm going to implement the setup controller hook. So very important in this hook to call this .super. It does a lot of important stuff. And I'm going to just do controller set loc, and then here I'm going to pass in, I actually like to do it this way. Now I can just type in get owner. Effectively, this is Ember get owner. This lookup data location. So effectively what we're doing here is we're adding a new property to this controller when it's set up by the route called loc. And the consequence is we can reference it directly in the template, the top level template that is associated with this route. So we'll go to application.hbs. Here's our navbar, and I'm just going to put it here. We'll do this so that it's not confused as a sub-expression. Let loc let long loc long. And I expect to see it. Well, it's there, but very, very long. We have very, very high precision location here. Yes.
A question did come in. What's the difference between adding instantiate false in the callback and adding it in the export at the bottom of the initializer module?
In the export at the bottom in the initializer module. To be clear, we're talking about adding it down here. Is that what we meant?
So.
So I don't think, unless I'm unaware of something here, I don't believe you can put instantiate false here because it's not, you're not dealing with the initializer that is instantiated or not. An initializer is just a function. It's a part of your app boot process. Instantiate false is something that is very related to this app.register call with the registration API. And you may have an initializer that does this or that doesn't use the registration API. So you can either pass in instantiate false here, or you can register, you can define registration options for particular types of objects. So if you look deeper into the registration API, there are ways to get and set registration options for all components or all services. This is the most intuitive place in my mind to put it because whoever's coming along and reading this piece of code, they're very clear that what you're passing in here, it's an object instance. It's not a constructor for an object. And I think there's value in doing this, even if there is some smart sniffing going on inside Ember, because now if your developer colleague looking at this can be very clear that this is a common instance of an object shared everywhere.
A couple other questions. They wanted you just to look at the application route code one more time, and then also, can you remove that instantiate false and see if it continues to work? Because they can't get it to work without it.
Maybe there is no smart sniffing. Yep, looks like we got a problem here. So here we go. Failed to create an instance of data location. All right, so instantiate false is pretty important. So essentially, it's like trying to do new and then object literal, and that's not JavaScript. So, and are we good online? Okay,
Did you show the
route.
application route code?
Yep. So that's an adapter. Let me close this stuff out. So the application route code, the meaningful stuff, let me just add a new line here to make it easier to understand. So setup controller is essentially the only new thing that we added, other than making getOwner available without having to use ember.getOwner. And we're getting the container to which this instance of a route belongs. And then on that container, we're calling lookup and passing a container key. And so what lookup is going to return is the object stored in the container under that key. And we're just using controller.set. So in addition to the model being available in the context of our application.hbs template, we've also got this thing loc, so we can use that directly. So it's almost like an auxiliary model that we're setting up here. And the end result is, it's beautiful. No, it's horrible, but it's showing.
A couple comments. I don't know if there's anything you can do, but they're saying it's hard to see, like understand the code without the wrapping. And then also they can't see the full path of what file you're in. So they're having trouble understanding what they're looking at.
Got it. There is, I can do one thing here. So that's the file I'm working in, the application.js route. And let me just temporarily get rid of this. Oop, how am I to do it? Maybe that. So we're passing two things to this function. Loc, the string, and then getOwner. So I'll break this up into two lines, an easier way. So this is going to give us our JavaScript object, and then we're just making it available on the controller. All right, so we've used the registration API. We've created an initializer. We saw that we can, defer readiness and advance readiness. Again, you want to use this sparingly because you don't want to intentionally slow your app's boot time unless there's a very good reason to do so. But occasionally there is a need to do it, and this is really the only place that you could do it intuitively without having to get into the non-standard way of starting your app up, which would mean it doesn't auto boot, and you have to explicitly say, create a new Ember app, and this is where I want you to put it in this div. And you really, if you can get away with it, you want to allow the process to start up automatically and just to defer as needed, defer readiness.